behind the music, and this one's about Orpheus, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And the title refers to VH1 behind the music, I'm
that's
assuming.
correct.
Yeah, which some people may not remember, but I somehow remember, even though I wasn't allowed to watch TV as a kid, I still sort of knew about it. So, uh,
Right. Yeah. So, I saw some of those in the '90s. This series Behind the Music that VH1 would run, and it was, you know, what I remember was primarily the guys from the hair metal bands, who were so terribly behaved,
uh,
and they're coming on and describing, what was going on, and the most outrageous, unbelievable things, um, but it had always been on my mind to do a version of that with Orpheus, right? The great poet singer, mythological poet singer of antiquity. Incidentally, the Orpheus and Eurydice myth first appears in Virgil's Georgics, just so we
oh,
get in
I
our
didn't know that.
obligatory Virgil mention
Very
before the
interesting.
poem, I think. Um, but right, so to try to retell um, this famous myth, right, about a lover who, when his beloved, Eurydice, is being chased, she's bitten by a snake, she dies, she goes down into Hades. Orpheus is grief stricken. He descends into Hades and he sings so sweetly that he charms Cerberus, the three headed dog. He charms all the shades. The ghosts come around and listen to him sing. It's so beautiful. And Hades is convinced to let Eurydice return with Orpheus. The song is so beautiful. And there's one condition, that until they've reached the world above, until they've come into the land of the living again, Orpheus can't look back. And of course, on the verge of the light, just right at the very edge, he worries that Eurydice may not be following him up the path, that something may have happened. He looks back, and she's swept away back into the realm of the dead forever. And Orpheus, after this, is so distraught that he goes around singing his laments, and they're so beautiful that the trees and the rivers and the creatures all sing along with him. And the Maenads are the devotees of Bacchus, and they rip Orpheus apart in a bacchanalian fit. They rip Orpheus apart the way that they would normally rip Dionysus apart, the fertility god. And as Orpheus's severed head is floating down the river Hebrus, it's still calling out Eurydice, Eurydice.
Wow.
Very beautiful, beautiful story about the limits of art, right? That
Yeah.
art can bring the ghost, bring the past right to the edge, but it can't bring it back to life, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's very interesting. I'm glad you told the whole story, because I only knew that up to that point where he fails to bring her out of Hades. I actually didn't know what ended up happening to Orpheus. And so now I understand more of the poem now that you've explained that. I didn't know about, I wasn't quite sure what I knew who the Maenads are, but I didn't know how they were connected to Orpheus. So,
Yeah,
and he is the singer. He is like the sort of mystical singer of the ancient world. There's these, Orphic rites and, all this stuff. And, so it's very interesting. The hair metal connection kind of works for the descent to the underworld and all of
well,
that.
and the way that we treat,
Um,
there's sort of an oblique commentary on the way that our culture sort of creates popular stars to rip them apart. This pattern happens over and again, and one hesitates to compare Bret Michaels from Poison with Orpheus, but
right.
there are some analogs at least. So anyway, the goal in this poem was to sort of undercut the grand mythology presented by Virgil, presented by Ovid as well, and do a sort of modern retelling, as you mentioned. And for that, I chose a difficult challenge for myself. So the stanza that I use in this poem is the ballad stanza. So it is the stanza of "Every Rose Has Its Thorn" by Poison. It's the stanza that, almost every hymn is written in. It's the stanza, most songs are in.
Right.
And on the page, if you're writing a poem in the stanza, it really wants to sing. The meter, the rhymes, it wants to sing. And I thought, let me see if I have enough technical ability to make it talk instead of singing, right? That is to move the singing to the background, the sort of grand.
Hence the beyond the music, where the focus is on the stories, not the actual songs.
Indeed, precisely. Yes. Okay. So behind the music, and there's a little epigraph from Virgil's Georgics to help readers know that this is about Orpheus. So Eurydice says, What is this, unhappy Orpheus? This madness that's undone both you and me. The Maenads were another story. Only blank years could wear away the otherworldly glory he dreamed. Only despair could tame that wild tongue with the truth. Even with her in Hades, he'd spritz his vodka with vermouth and let drinks conjure ladies sprawling before him, fawning over the brave, the sensitive genius who'd stormed hell for his lover. Dreams are one way to live. So, one night, he typed out a dream. Great loss, he knew, needs closure. To say he'd been ripped limb from limb, resolved into composure what otherwise was open-ended. It calmed the sea to glass, one might say. Well, it was too splendid a lie, shriller than brass and broad sun, but he knew the tale would be loved, being easy enough to pacify love's failures. Alive, he hid in sleazy all-night dives, downing martinis alone in the timeless dark. Got old, while lithe girls in bikinis lay tanning in the park with rich tech kids who'd never heard of him or his doomed passion. Got older when he learned the word itself was out of fashion. And yet lived, crooked, drunk, and hoary, beyond the nameless pain he'd known, beyond his dream of glory. An ancient man made sane by senselessness. In his last weeks, he wrote, much to his credit, a song through which the sad truth speaks cleanly. Few have read it.
In the context of a musician who has lived this debauched lifestyle, as the behind the music kind of idea, and lived through it to become somewhat sober, we all have known let's say converts or former recovered addicts who sort of romanticize and are always talking about their sordid past because it's exciting and kind of but the other people who have truly moved on, and are not somehow trying to get attention or trying to mythologize their past, something like that.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's about that discovery, and even in our art, right? Our culture likes art that is sort of histrionic, sort of performative. Generally speaking, we like things that make a loud noise. And often, a lot of the best artists don't make the loudest noise. They tend to be quieter. beyond the histrionics of, this tale, oh, I was ripped apart. It's easy to play these things up, and harder to live with the knowledge of continuance, that things go on. There are terrible tragedies, and we go on. We go on living. We adapt. That's sometimes harder to face.